Howdy, folks. This is Grouchy Old Patriot. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Grouch. Glad you're here. Got a couple of controversial topics to talk about today. Some of you may agree with me, some of you may not. But if it gets you thinking, that's the important thing. I really don't care if you agree with me. I really don't care if you don't agree with me. I just want you to get your wheels turning. I want you to start thinking about things that you may not have thought about since high school civics class. That ought to tell you how old I am. Hell, they don't even teach civics in high school anymore. We've got a federal government that has run amok. We've got executive agencies and bureaus that promulgate rules and regulations that have the force of law, that don't have the constitutional authority to do so. Congress has delegated its legislative authority to a lot of these agencies and said, y'all deal with this because we're too busy raising money for our next election to be bothered with them. And a lot of us as citizens feel like we have no power to do anything about it. Well, there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk about that might just give the power back to the people in a manner of speaking. Oh, I can't remember the name of the damn book now. Starship Troopers. Robert Heinlein wrote a book back many, many years ago. When I was younger, I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy books. But in Starship Troopers, even though the movie was crap, the book had a theme in it that talked about service equals citizenship. Now, they went a little far in the book. They went way too far in the movie about you had to serve in the military in order to earn your citizenship and all that. I don't agree with that. But when this country was founded, our original governing document was the Articles of Confederation. And yes, I know it's no longer in effect. It was superseded by the Constitution. But there are a couple of things we can learn from the Articles of Confederation. One of them was that you had to be a landowner to be eligible to vote. Now, I don't agree with that. That wouldn't fly today. But if you read about what the intent was, they were trying to give people who had a stake in their state, in their nation, the ability to run their nation. And not be controlled by mob rule from those who had no stake in the game. I kind of like that. My version would go something like this. If you're sitting around on your ass waiting on a government handout, living in government housing, paid for by the taxpayers, You're going to continue to vote for them handouts and that government housing because you got a good life. You ain't got to work. You ain't got to do nothing. You just sit there and collect paycheck, collect food stamps, EBT, whatever you want to call it, low rent housing, free housing. You got no stake in the game. So you're going to continue to vote for free stuff. Well, how about this? We all have to file a federal income tax return. How about tying that to the voter rolls? If you pay no federal income tax, you don't have a stake in the game. If you pay no federal income tax, that means they're not taking your money for things you don't agree with. If you pay federal income tax, and I'm not just talking filing your taxes. If your tax burden for the year is $5,000 and you get a $5,001 tax refund through earned income credit or child tax credits or whatever other little things they want to put in there, if the money you get back is more than the money you paid in, you don't vote. Your name is stricken from the voter rolls in your county and your precinct that year. If your tax burden was $5,000 and you got back $4,999, you paid tax. Granted, it was only $1, but you paid tax. So you have some stake in the game, you're allowed to vote. All these people that couldn't hold a job, didn't want to find a job, want to sit on ass on your dime, could no longer vote for free stuff. I know that'd be pretty controversial, probably wouldn't pass, but something to think about. The other thing I've been thinking about is the way that our government is formed and why they are doing the things they do. We are supposed to be a nation, a republic. We're not a democracy. A true democracy is where 51% of the people tell the other 49% of the people how they're going to live. It's mob rule. We are a republic. We elect representatives to represent our interests at the federal level or at the state level. And in so doing, the desires of the mob are supposed to be tempered. Our founding fathers, gentlemen that wrote the Constitution, pretty learned men. You can say what all you want to. Oh, they were slave owners. They were colonists. They colonized this country. They invaded it. Whatever. They still created a government that worked when it had never worked before in the history of the world, had rarely been tried, and they were pretty smart. They knew they couldn't let the power rest in a few hands or one hand. They created a government of 3 equal branches: executive, legislative, judiciary, that had checks and balances on one another. And we're supposed to be a nation of sovereign states. The 10th Amendment, which was added, says that any powers not enumerated to the federal government are retained by the states or the people. And they gave the states a say-so in the federal government. Originally, the senators were elected by the legislators of the states and sent to Congress to represent the state's interests in the federal government. Now, in a way, you had, or the people had a say-so, because they got to elect their state legislature. The House of Representatives was directly elected by the people. And that is supposed to be the people's voice in the federal government. The Senate is supposed to be the state's voice, collectively, in the federal government. '17th Amendment did away with that. 17th Amendment made the Senate directly electable by the people. The states lost a lot of say-so in the federal government. The House of Representatives, being the people's voice, was elected for 2-year terms and didn't have to be as old and wise as the senators. The president, executive branch, only elected for 4-year term. The senators were appointed for a 6-year term. They were supposed to be the learned gentlemen of the nation who tempered the fires of passion coming from the House of Representatives with wisdom, and checked the powers of the executive, because he was only there for 4 years. They were there for 6. But now it's a popularity contest. There's no difference in electing your congressman and electing your senator. You go check the box, and most of you, believe me, most of you recognize the name because you heard it on the news, or you saw it in the newspaper, or it popped up on an advertisement on your damn smartphone. You have no idea who you're voting for. You don't know their policies. You don't know their voting record. So we get what we've got in Washington right now. Few other problems. Roe v. Wade, just overturned by the Supreme Court. Been in the news a lot lately. And people say that the Supreme Court is illegitimate and has no place and our Constitution's outdated. Well, how about this? Throw a few things at you. How about an Article 5 Convention of the States, where we put a few amendments in the Constitution to help it get back to what it was meant to be. How many of you have one of them? It's a pocket constitution. I suggest every one of you pick one up, read it, set it in the magazine rack next to your damn crapper in the bathroom, so when you're doing your business, you can pick it up and thumb through it. Even if you only read one article or one amendment while you're doing your business, you've learned something. Instead of playing Angry Birds or Candy Crush or whatever it is on your phone, wasting time. Now, if we did have an Article 5 Convention of the States, there are 6 amendments that I would propose. Number 1, repeal the 17th Amendment. Get rid of the fundraising and campaigning and popularity contests that the U.S. Senate has become. Put it back in the hands of the state legislatures, because I guarantee you those guys are going to do what's in the best interest of your state. California wants to send kooky left-wing progressive socialists to the Senate. Well, they can do it. But their 2 senators would be countermanded by the 2 conservatives that Oklahoma sent. And if you didn't like the way your legislature in your state was choosing senators, well, you get to kick them out at the ballot box. It's a whole lot easier to get rid of your local representative or your local senator. Your vote means a whole lot more in your district than it does trying to get rid of a corrupt senator where you're voting against the whole state. That'd be number 1. Put the power back in the states. The states then would have a check on what the federal government's doing. You can't pass a law without both houses. Right? The House of Representatives could come up with whatever kooky bill they wanted to. Hell, Nancy Pelosi could want to spend $15 trillion sending aid to the moon. But if the senators don't agree with it, that law don't go anywhere. Or that bill don't go anywhere. It don't become a law. It gives the power back to flyover country and the smaller states that don't have large populations to help check the power of the federal government. Second amendment that I would propose would be an amendment to fix the number of Supreme Court justices at 9. We've all heard that, the Democrats don't like what's going on, so they're going to pack the court. We're going to pack the court. We're going to increase the number of judges to 15. Okay. But what happens when Republicans take control and say, we don't like what direction the court's going, so we're going to raise the number to 17. Pretty soon you have a Supreme Court like the one in California that's got more damn justices on it than it does law clerks. I don't know if that's true, but sure as hell seems like it. So yeah, we fixed the number of justices at 9. Number 3 would be term limits. Now, back when this country was founded, when the Constitution was put in place, it was understood that our government would be gentlemen legislatures. They would go to Congress, do their job, and then go back home. George Washington himself could have made the presidency whatever he wanted. He didn't. He willingly gave up office and went back to Mount Vernon. That's the way it was supposed to be. But now we've got career politicians, people who have never worked in the public sector or the private sector, don't know what it means to earn a paycheck or have to make payroll for employees. They get a damn degree in some Ivy League university somewhere in political science, go to work as a aide or a clerk for a congressman or a senator, and spend their entire life in government. Ain't the way it's supposed to be. So my third amendment would be term limits. President already has them. He can serve a maximum of 2 terms or 10 years if he's filling out the last 2 terms of a prior president. Well, how about this? An amendment that says that no person can serve more than a total of 12 years in federal government service, or no elected official. You could be elected to 2 terms as a congressman. That'd be 4 years right there. But then you know what? If you wanted to be a senator, you could serve 1.5 terms because you'd only have 8 years left. If you served 2 years as a senator, or let's just say you were Barack Obama and served, as a senator, and then wanted to be elected president. Well, you know what? You've already served 6 years as a senator. Can't serve 8 years as a president because you're limited to 12 years total service. Total elected service. That would get rid of a bunch of these career politicians. Supreme Court, lifetime appointments back in the good old days when people only lived to be 65. They weren't appointed to the Supreme Court until they were in their 40s, 50s maybe. Well, how about we put a term limit on a Supreme Court justice to where they could serve no more than 16 years. Don't know why I picked that number, but it would less turnover there than in the rest of government, so there would be a stabilizing factor. So yeah, we'll have some term limits. How about an amendment that would put a sunset clause on all Supreme Court decisions? Let's say Congress passes a law. Somebody brings suit, Supreme Court rules that law is unconstitutional, it's not going to be followed. Or a provision of that law is unconstitutional. Or Chevron deference, where the Supreme Court ruled that if Congress makes a vague law, then the regulatory agency's interpretation will be followed. It's called Chevron deference. Goes back to a Chevron oil company Supreme Court case. Well, how about we have an amendment that says that if 2/3 of the state legislatures disagree and vote to overturn a Supreme Court ruling, within 5 years of that ruling, the ruling becomes null and void. Supreme Court ruled that a regulatory agency could interpret a federal law that was vague in the Chevron case. Well, if 2/3 of the state legislatures disagreed with that and said, no, the regulatory agency don't have that authority, and if they did so within 5 years, they could overturn that ruling. After 5 years, that ruling stands, becomes case law. And you put that 5-year time limit in there. You don't leave it open-ended, because anybody's learned that if a government agency has an open-ended time limit, they're going to take forever. They're not going to get the ball rolling. So all your state legislatures, 2/3 of them got to act within 5 years. So we've got repealing the 17th Amendment, term limits, limiting the Supreme Court, and a sunset law on Supreme Court decisions that can be overturned. My last recommendation, and this one's going to be pretty controversial, but how about an amendment that forms a council of governors? They'll be made up of 15 governors who would serve on a rotating basis based on their state's numbered entry into the Union. And they serve for 3 years. Now, the first 15, the very first council that gets elected, would be a first class, second class, third class. First class would serve for 1 year, second class for 2 years, third class for 3 years. And thereafter, all would be 15 or 3-year cycle. And that way, every 3 years, you've got 5 new governors entering the council. What this council's sole purpose would be, sole purpose, the only thing constitutionally limited to investigating and prosecuting treason, corruption, illegal, unlawful activity, and ethics within Congress, within any federal agency at any level, and the Supreme Court. And based on the findings of this council, any state's attorney general would be empowered by the council to bring legal action against a federal official. Because right now they're not held accountable. Hell, if you watch some of these congressional hearings on C-SPAN, even these executive agencies who are called to testify before Congress don't give an answer. They're not held accountable. Nothing's ever done. Nobody's ever fired. Nobody's ever put in jail. Well, a council of governors would have the power to do that. Once again, returning some power, taking it away from the Fed and giving it back to the states. I don't know what y'all think about all that. Some of you probably don't agree with it. Some of you might. Some of you may agree with some of it and not agree with others. But if I got you thinking, I did something. And that's really about all I got for you today, folks. If this video did get you thinking a little bit, share it. Talk about it with your neighbors. Maybe not talk about the video, but talk about the ideas with your church members, friends, family. If you think there's somebody out there who might benefit from this video and get them thinking and open their eyes up, share it with them. I'd appreciate that. But what do I know? I'm just a grouchy old man. But I guess I'll be seeing y'all around on the next video, and I wish each and every one of you Godspeed. And may Liberty's torch light your path. Thank you.